In many ways, you live a pretty stoic existence. I got a chance to spend a couple of weeks with you. In many ways, you seek to minimize the negative effects of the outside world on your mind. You've written, quote, "If you want to reach your full potential and maintain clarity of mind, stay away from addictive substances. My success and health are the result of 20 plus years of complete abstinence from alcohol, tobacco, coffee, pills, and illegal drugs. Short-term pleasure isn't worth your future." Let's talk about each one of these. Alcohol. What's been your philosophy behind that?
That one is quite easy. When I was 11 years old, my biochemistry teacher, he gave me this book he wrote. It was called The Illusion of Paradise. And there he would describe the biological and chemical processes that happen in your body once you consume this or that substance. It was mainly related to illegal drugs, but alcohol was one of these addictive substances that he covered. So it turns out that when you drink alcohol, the thing that happens is that your brain cells become paralyzed. They become literally zombies. And then next day, sometime after the party is over, some of your brain cells die and never get to normal. So think about this. If your brain is this most valuable tool you have in your journey to success and happiness, why would you destroy this tool for short-term pleasure? This sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, in many ways, it's a poison we'll let in our body. But by way of advice, what advice would you give to people who consider not drinking? A lot of people use alcohol to enable them to have a vibrant social life. There's a lot of pressures from society, at a party to drink so you can socialize. So what advice would you give to them, to people who imagine having a social life without alcohol?
Well, first of all, don't be afraid to be contrarian. Set your own rules. Secondly, if you feel you need to drink, there must be some problem you're trying to conceal. There's some fear you're not ready to confront. And you have to address this fear. If there is a good-looking girl you're afraid to approach, get rid of this fear, approach her, practice, do it again and again. It's pretty banal, but this advice works.
Fix the underlying problem, which is usually at the very bottom is always going to be fear. Work on that.
And very often people are trying to escape something in their lives with alcohol. What is it they're trying to escape? What is this problem? You have to get to the bottom of it. Your mind is trying to tell you something valuable, and instead of addressing it directly, you are flooding it in alcohol, which is sort of a spiritual painkiller, but works only temporarily, and then you have to pay the debt with interest.
So what do you do? I mean, you've been in a lot of gatherings, a lot of parties. Is there some challenges to saying no?
For me, not at all. I've been always ready to stand my ground and say no when I feel something's not right. And it's extraordinary how easily we humans are affected by what we perceive as majority. Because nobody since ancient times, since million years ago, wants to be left out by the tribe. We are scared that we won't become accepted anymore, which thousands of millions of years ago meant we're going to starve to death. So we have to consciously fight this inclination to be agreeable with everything that the majority imposes on you, because it's quite clear that many things that the majority, in many activities the majority is engaging in, are not bringing you any good.
So that's another fear you have to face, going into a party and the fear of being the outcast at that party, of being different than others. at that party, at that social gathering, in the crowd of humans, be different. That's a fear.
That's a fear. And it's quite irrational if you think about it. It was something that made a lot of sense 20,000 years ago. It makes zero sense today. Because if you think about it, if you do the same thing everybody else around you is doing, you don't have any competitive advantage. And you don't get to become outstanding at some point in your life.
Yeah, that's one of the things we talked about, sort of by way of advice, is if you want to be successful in life, you want to be different.
Definitely.
And perhaps, I think you said you want to achieve mastery at a niche. So find the niche at which you can pursue with all your effort and achieve mastery. And the niche being different than anything that anybody else is doing. Can you explain that a little bit more?
So obviously, in order to contribute to the society you're in, to the economy of the country you live in, you have to do something that is valuable. But if you're doing something that everybody else is doing anyway, what's the value of it? Now, it sounds easier than it is done to do something that nobody else is doing, because we humans are surrounded by all kinds of information, which makes us want to copy what we're perceiving. At the same time, there are so many areas which you can explore that have nothing to do with the information you receive on the daily basis. So it's extremely important to curate the information sources that you have so that you wouldn't be somebody who is left to the will of AI-based algorithmic feed telling you what's important, so that you end up consuming the same information, the same stuff, the same memes, the same news as everybody else. But rather, you should be proactive. You should deliberately try to set a goal, an area that you want to explore, and then actively search information that is relevant to this field, so that one day you can become the world's number one expert in this field. And it's not that difficult to do that. You have to just remain consistent, because nobody else is trying to do that. Everybody else is just reading the same news and discussing the same news every day. But this way, they don't get to have a competitive advantage.
Yeah, majority of the population becomes slaves to the AI recommender systems, AI-driven recommender systems. And so the content everybody's fed is the same thing, and we all become the same. On that point, one of the different things you do is you don't use a phone, except occasionally to test Telegram features. But I've been with you for 2 weeks. I haven't seen you use a phone at all in the way that most people use a phone, like for their social media. So can you describe your philosophy behind that?
I don't think a phone is a necessary device. I remember growing up, I didn't have a mobile phone. When I was a student at the university, I didn't have a mobile phone. When I finally got it to use a mobile phone, I never used phone calls. I was always in airplane mode or mute. I hated the idea of being disturbed. My philosophy here is pretty simple. I want to define what is important in my life. I don't want other people or companies, all kinds of organizations telling me what is important today, and what I should be thinking about. Just set up your own agenda. And the phone gets in your way.
It provides distractions. It guides what you should be looking at, what you will be looking at. So you don't want that. You want to quiet the mind. You want to choose what kind of stuff you let inside your mind.
Yes, because this way I can contribute to the progress of society, or at least I like to think this way. And this makes me happier.
How often do you find quiet time to just think and focus deeply on work without any distractions? You mentioned to me that you value quiet mornings.
Yes. So the thing I'm trying to do, I try to allocate as much time as possible for sleep. Now, even if I allocate, say, 11 or 12 hours for sleep, I won't sleep for 11 or 12 hours. So what I end up doing is I end up lying in bed thinking. And some people hate it. They say, "Oh, you have to take a sleeping pill," but I never take pills. I love these moments. I get so many brilliant ideas, or at least they seem brilliant to me at the moment, while I'm lying in bed, either late in the evening or early in the morning. That's my favorite time of the day. Sometimes I wake up, I go take a shower, still without a phone. Beautiful ideas can come to you while you're doing your morning exercise, your morning routine, without a phone. If you open your phone first thing in the morning, what you end up being is a creature that is told what to think about for the rest of the day. Same is true in a way if you've been consuming news from social media late at night. But then how do you define what is important and what you really want to become in life? Now, I'm not saying you have to completely stay away from all sources of information, but take some time to think about what's really important for you and what you want to change in this world.
So you definitely try to avoid digital devices for as many hours as possible in the morning, just to have the quiet thinking time, plus the crazy amounts of push-ups and
I know,
squats.
I know it's kind of counterintuitive because I founded one of the largest social networks in the world, after which I founded the second largest messaging app in the world. And you're supposed to be really connected. But the conclusion you reach very early is that the more connected and accessible you are, the less productive you are. And then how can you run this thing if you're constantly bombarded by all kinds of information, most of which is irrelevant to the success of what you're trying to build? You know, the entire world can be fascinated by a fight, a quarrel between the world's richest man and the world's most powerful man. But for the vast majority of these people following this saga, it's irrelevant. It won't change their lives. And in any case, they can't affect it. So it's a bit pointless. Of course, there are people who are engaged in activities that require them to be up to date of everything that's going on. But 99% of people aren't.
Yeah, the internet, social media presents to us drama in such a way that we think it's the biggest thing in the world, the most important thing on which the tides of history will turn. But in reality, most things will not turn the tides of history. And so I guess our challenge is to figure out what is the timeless thing. What is the thing that's happening today that's still going to be true in 10, 20 years? And from that, decide what you're going to do. And that's very difficult on social media because everybody's outraged. The news of the day, whatever the quarrel is, that's the thing that's everyone thinks the world will end because of this thing. And then another thing happens the next day.
And they're trying to influence your emotions.
Yeah.
And that's how you get into trouble, because you can be forced to make conclusions that are not in your best interest.